Hello folks, I'm Alex, this is Alex Unabridged, and today it's time to tier rank all 55 science fiction books I've read in the past 2 years. So welcome back to the channel if that is the case. Yes, something a little bit different today. Seeing as my year one of science fiction for the somewhat hesitant is done, I have finished that schedule and we are now into year two. I thought it'd be nice to look back at all of the stuff that I read for that and all of the stuff that kind of kicked off me wanting to do this project in the first place. From when I started reading bits and pieces of science fiction, largely because BookTube told me to. So we're coming up on my 2-year anniversary for BookTube. More on that when we get to it. It's a bit later on in the month. But I thought, yes, I would do a tier ranking of all the stuff that I've read so far. So that's 55 books, 55 science fiction books over 2 years. So without further ado, I will dive into this because this is going to take a while. So grab yourself a brew and some sustenance, some biscuits or something like that, and settle in and get ready to, scream at the screen when I place things in categories that you disagree with. So right, onwards then. So then, yes, the tier list, this is how it is structured. 5 categories. All of these are science fiction in some way. Most are pure science fiction, but there are some like horror sci-fi mixes in here, things like that. But basically, if I feel it's sci-fi enough, and if Storygraph lists it as also as science fiction as one of its classifications, then it's allowed. It's my tier list, my rules. So I've included stuff that is a bit more of a kind of a genre mix as well. So yes, the tiers for this tier ranking then. Starting down at the bottom, we've got Houston, we have a problem. These are for things that I DNF'd, that didn't get off the ground, so to speak, for whatever reason. Then we've got Stuck in Low Earth Orbit, things that I did finish, but didn't exactly rock my world. These are the things that I kind of didn't really like, to be honest. Then we've got Fly Me to the Moon. These are the things that, these are solid. I enjoyed these, but again, they weren't like favourites or anything. They're still good books, and I'd still recommend reading them. But yeah, they were a good time whilst I read them. Then we've got In a Galaxy Far, Far Away. We're getting into the real good stuff now. These are the things that I would absolutely reread, that I would recommend pretty much to anybody. And that that have kind of inspired me to read more of that author, things like that. But they're not the absolute pinnacle. They're not my absolute favourites. And then we've got the final one, To Infinity and Beyond. These are the absolute cream of the crop, absolute favourites, the things that have really inspired me to keep going reading science fiction, to just want to kind of gobble up more and more and more, whether it's in a particular subgenre or whether it's works by that author or what have you. Yeah, these are the ones that are my absolute favourites. So there we go. Those are the tiers. So let's get into these then. I will, as I drop these in, by the way, I'll try and order them a bit in them, so we've got a good kind of full ranking. I'll see how messy it gets. Okay, so starting off then with Douglas Adams and The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which I read in January of 2023, one of my first reads for in my BookTube career, if you like. This one is going into Fly Me to the Moon. I enjoyed this. I definitely enjoyed it, but it didn't kind of inspire me to necessarily go straight on and read the others in the series. It was great while it lasted, and it was kind of a good introduction to some real good humour in science fiction. But I think probably for me, a little goes a long way when it comes to Adams. So as I say, really enjoyed it, but I haven't gone back to that series yet. I probably will at some stage, but I'm not in any rush. Next up then, we've got Alien Covenant Origins. This is also going to go into Fly Me to the Moon. Good, solid Alien tie-in. This is the prequel to the plot of Alien Covenant, the movie. Not the best Alien movie, in my opinion. But this was actually this was very good. This exceeded expectations when I read it. But it was good, especially considering that there's very little, if any, actual alien action in it. It's more about the kind of the politics, the game playing, things like that between the corporations in the alien universe, Weyland-Yutani, etc. So it's more about that really than anything else. But it's still it's pacey. It's got good writing in it. It's still a really enjoyable book. But yeah, it's not the best alien book that I've read. That will come later. Okay, next up then we've got Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield, a kind of horror science fiction for sure. This one I think also has to go into Fly Me to the Moon. In the galaxy, don't know. I'm going to put it right at the front there for the moment and Fly Me to the Moon. I may reconsider that as we go along, but yeah, no, I think that's got to go in there. Yeah, quite a creepy tale of a couple, two women, one of which comes back changed after a deep sea diving expedition. And it's quite creepy. It's quite mysterious, unsettling. I think again for me, it's like I wanted more of the stuff that was kind of flashbacks to or explanations of the diving mission. I kind of felt like it could have been explored a little bit better, I think, or developed a little bit more for my liking. But it's a very good book, and I certainly would recommend it. Yeah, really, really lovely writing style, actually. Okay, next up we have got The Ferryman. Yeah, I think this one has got to go in A Galaxy Far, Far Away. I really like Justin Cronin's The Passage trilogy. And this was the first thing I'd read of him outside of that world, the Passage world. And yeah, this was really interesting. Twists and turns and just really interesting concepts. And I do like his writing style. He's got a really, really nice writing style. Good character work, really good character work. So yeah, I did really enjoy that one. Then we've got Philip K. Dick's The Three Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch. Yeah, that one's going to go into Fly Me to the Moon again. I do like Philip K. Dick, what I've read of Philip K. Dick's stuff, but that is not my favourite by far. I think Scanner Darkly is probably my favourite, but still very good, but quite discombobulating, usual like Philip K. Dick craziness. But yeah, really interesting, mad kind of plot as you'd expect. But yeah, definitely still worth a read. Then we've got Night Flyers by George R.R. Martin. I'm not a Martin fan when it comes to Game of Thrones, but this instalment from him I really enjoyed. This is going in A Galaxy Far, Far Away. Really good, punchy, sort of murder mystery-ish in space. Yeah, really interesting little piece. I really enjoyed that. Okay, then we've got Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. This has got to go into Infinity and Beyond. I loved this, and I still really need to get back and finish the rest of what is now the quadrilogy of the Southern Reach series, the Area X stuff. I tried to read the second one, but I was in a reading slump, so I put it away to come back to when I was in a better frame of mind. But yeah, Annihilation, absolutely brilliant. I love the descriptive qualities of his writing. I love the way that the character is explored through her own writings, her own journalings, and just the world is really creepy, really strange, but beautiful at the same time. Really beautifully dark writing. Okay, next up we've got Adrian Tchaikovsky's Walking to Aldebaran, a short novella. This one can go also, I think, in A Galaxy Far, Far Away. This was a great introduction to Tchaikovsky's writing for me. This is the first thing I ever read by him or listened to as an audiobook that I had. And it took me a while to go back to Tchaikovsky, but this was a good kind of introduction to his humour. Very British. And just some of the bonkers concepts that he comes up with. This is set on a strange meteor in space that an astronaut is exploring, and it's just full of like weird gravity shifts and like weird creatures and stuff like that. It's bizarre. It's really bizarre. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and as I say, it did spur me on to eventually go and read Children of Time, which we'll get to in a bit. Okay, next up we've got Neuromancer. This is the first to go in Houston We Have a Problem. Didn't like this at all. Did not like the writing style at all. Found it completely confusing. At the end of the day, I didn't feel connected to it enough to want to do the work to kind of get into it. So it was just not for me, that one. Then we've got Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. This one is going to go in A Galaxy Far, Far Away. I think probably, yeah, between... I'll pop it there. Yeah, I really enjoyed this. There's a lot of faults to this. You have to suspend your disbelief quite a bit with it. And the main character is very, very flawed and not as smart as you'd like to think that he is. But it's still really good fun. It's just a fun one. As long as you don't take it too seriously and don't poke too hard at the potential holes. It's really, really good fun. It's a really good fun idea, and it's a really good fun book. Okay, next up, A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. Anyone who's watched the channel for a bit will know exactly where this is going. Yes, this is going into Infinity and Beyond. I adore this book so much. Hug in a Book, brilliant solar punk, sex positive, you know, gender positive, got a non-binary main character, just generally positive of everything. Really lovely world, and just some really lovely gentle philosophy. Nothing mind-blowing, but it quietly asks questions that just leave you thinking nicely. Okay, next up we've got Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut. Definitely not your sort of standard science fiction, but science fiction I would say nonetheless. Yeah, this one is gonna go in to Infinity and Beyond. I thought this has so much punch to it for its length. It's a very affecting book, very effective and affecting book. Great anti-war piece. And just really humorous as well. Really humorous, great structure, great writing style. I can see why it's a modern classic, absolutely. Speaking of modern classics, we're going to go with Fahrenheit 451 next. Yeah, you know where that's going, don't you? In fact, I'm going to pop it in there. Yeah, I love this book. This is my first Bradbury, I think. Yeah, phenomenal. I love the opening to this, and just all of the visual, the imagery in it, that kind of thing. But also just, you know, the plot of it. I think it's a really good tight plot, and it does what it wants, does what it needs to do. But it's dark and not depressing, but it does make you think for sure. Okay, Project Hail Mary, Andy Weir again. But most people will probably know where that's going. And in fact, I did read this before I started BookTube, but I've reread it so many times in the past 2 years that I'm putting it in here, because technically I did read it whilst I've been on BookTube. But yeah, you know where this is going. It's going right up here, and in fact at the moment it's going up the front, because I love this book so much. It's a comfort book. It's, you know, it's not to everyone's taste. It's much lighter than a lot of the science fiction I've read, but it's just such a fantastic story, and it has the best like buddy sort of friendship sort of that kind of relationship in it that I've ever read, and I don't know whether I'll ever find anything that quite matches up to it. It's got all of the emotions in it. It's, you know, it's humor, it's sadness, it's really tense in parts. Yeah, I just love it. Absolutely love it. Okay, next up then we've got Grasshopper Jungle. This was the very first book that I read for my science fiction for the Somewhat Hesitant series. I started off with a couple of YA science fiction books. This one was an absolute surprise to me, recommended by my good buddy Troy, Mr. Troy Tradup. This one is going in a galaxy far, far away. And I think this is actually going to drop in. Yeah, I'm going to drop it in there. I think this is great. I haven't read the second one, and by all accounts, the second one isn't quite as good. So I don't want to spoil my enjoyment of the first one by having a lesser experience with the second one, really. But yeah, this was a real surprise. This is about, you know, two teenage lads who end up dealing with the fact that their town is being overrun by crazed human-eating giant praying mantises who are also all as horny as hell, and it's got that kind of trashy element to it, but it's also got a lot of really interesting kind of philosophy in it. And one of the main characters, one of the boys, it switches between this very teenage boy-like narrative, because he's dealing with the fact that he's also kind of in love with his best friend, and he's also got a girlfriend, and he's just a big bag of hormones. It kind of goes between the sort of thing you'd expect from a sort of teenage narrator on that to like really quite interesting sort of philosophy and ideas of like family history and legacy and, you know, hereditary stuff and things like that. It's a really, really interesting setup, and I thought he did it brilliantly. So yeah, that one goes up there. Okay, next up we've got The Stepford Wives by Ira Levin. Yeah, that's got to go in a galaxy far, far away for sure. Where? I think that's got to go up here. Yeah, not my favourite Levin. My favourite Levin would be Rosemary's Baby, but of course that's horror, so that doesn't get in on this list. But yeah, this is great. This is great science fiction, horror, feminist satire. Yeah, just again really good fun, but with some really like punchy messaging in it as well. Great writing from Levin as always, and a really good short. Yeah, as I say, short and packs a punch again. Then we've got The Girl Who Broke the Sea. My other YA science fiction read from January last year. This one I think goes in Fly Me to the Moon. I reckon in there. I was really impressed with this. I'd not heard about this before. This just popped up in a kind of a list somewhere, I think online, that I was looking at for, you know, YA books generally, looking for stuff for one of my nieces. And I thought, oh, that sounds good. I'll stick that on the list. And yeah, I was really impressed with that. It's a really good pacey story about a young lass who has to go and like relocate with her mum, who's a scientist, who gets employed in this super deep sea rig. And there's something strange down there. So it's not horror. There's some tension. There's definitely tension there, but it is science fiction for sure. But it's again a really good teenage narrator. So yeah, really was impressed with that. I'd recommend that for sure. Okay, next up then we've got The Swarm by Arthur Herzog III. This is, I think, the novelisation of the film The Swarm. So this is Killer Bees. This is going to go in Stuck in Low Earth Orbit. There were elements of this that I liked, but unfortunately a lot of it was quite dull because it went way too hard into the sort of science side of things. Lots of like quite lengthy and ultimately reasonably dull conversations between scientists where I was like, come on, killer bees, action please. I did watch the film afterwards as well, which is awful, but hilariously awful, with Michael Caine. Yeah, I think both the book and the film are not great, but I think just out of like pure ridiculousness, I enjoyed the film a bit more. even though the book I would say is objectively better. Okay, next up is Asimov's Foundation. This is going to go into Fly Me to the Moon. And I think I'm going to put it in there. Get in. I did really enjoy this in terms of the world that Asimov set up. This huge, expansive kind of universe. And I do want to go back to this series and read all of it, and read all of the stuff, you know, the iRobot stuff, and, you know, all of it, basically. I want to know about the universe. I like the lore side of things. I like that kind of thing. The writing, however, was quite dry. I think had it just been a little bit less of conversations in rooms, I would have probably enjoyed it. It probably would have got bumped up into the next category. But yeah, it was fine. It was fine. It was enjoyable for sure, and I definitely recommend it just for its, like, you know, expansive imagination of this world and what Asimov was doing, creating that. But from a writing style perspective, it's fine. It's fine. Okay, Arthur C. Clarke and Childhood's End then. Yeah, this one is going up here. I loved this one. I'm going to pop it in. I'm going to put it in there for now because I do really like this. This was my first Clarke, and this was the first science fiction on my Science Fiction for the Somewhat Hesitant reading that really made me kind of go, oh, okay, this is where it's at. This is what I'm here for. Clarke, love Clarke's style. He is sneaky. He introduces his mind-blowing concepts in such a managed way and through really interesting characters and world building and stuff. So he kind of ramps up to the mind-melting stuff. So by the time I get there, I'm not put off by it. I've totally invested in the world and the story. And he's got a real grounded, kind of down-to-earth sort of voice as well. Some great humour as well. He can be very dry. So yeah, I love that. I'm still thinking about the big questions in that, even, you know, nearly a year later. So yeah, Clarke's Childhood's End. Absolutely, if you've not read it, get on it. Okay, then we've got The Martian by Andy Weir. Yeah, I really like this one. It's nowhere near as good as Project Hail Mary. But it's definitely deserving to be in a galaxy far, far away from me. The character voice between Mark Watney and Ryland Grace in Project Hail Mary is very similar, should we say. But I don't mind because Weir writes that kind of character really well. The Martian wasn't anywhere near as funny, and it didn't have some of the extra elements that I loved about Project Hail Mary. But it's still a really easy, really good read, fun, with just enough kind of science in the science fiction that I can kind of be interested in that side of things without getting, you know, overwhelmed by it. Then we've got Artemis by Andy Weir. This, however, is not going up there. That is going in Stuck in Low Earth Orbit. I didn't like that at all. I thought, like, the quality level between Artemis and the other two of his it dropped massively. The writing is nowhere near as good. The world building is nowhere near as good. The characters were not believable. Yeah, no, I just did not like. Okay, A Prayer for the Crown Shy. I wonder if you can guess where that's going. Yes, that is going up here, and it is in fact going to go in front of A Psalm for the Wild-Built. I think I did actually prefer the second in the duology, because this is of course duology. I did prefer the second instalment to the first. They're both amazing, I love them. But there was something about the second one, I think maybe because we got to see even more of the actual world that Sibling Dex, the T-Monk in it, even more of the world that they live in. We saw a lot of kind of them out kind of on their own in the wilderness in the first book, whereas now we've got the robot, Moscap, coming back in and exploring Dex's kind of world and how they live. And there's some wonderful stuff in it again, some really heartwarming stuff. It's another hug in the book. And yeah, it's just I love them. Okay, then we've got The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury. Yeah, this one is going to go in Fly Me to the Moon. And I think I'll pop it in there for now. This is a mixed bag for me. There are some stories in here I just really didn't get on with at all, because this is a fix-up kind of novel. You know, it's a stitch-up, fix-up novel, whatever you want to call it, where it's lots of short stories stitched together in a way that kind of makes a kind of an ongoing narrative. And yeah, some stories I really didn't get on with. So, you know, I think the vast majority of stories I kind of went, oh, yeah, that's good, you know. Some I really didn't like, and then there was a couple which I just thought were phenomenal. One of my favourite short stories, you know, to date has come from there, which is There Will Be Soft Rains. And so yeah, there's some absolutely brilliant stuff in there. But yeah, it's just a mixed bag, I think, for me, that one, but still very good. Then we've got The Day of the Triffids. Yeah, I think that's got to go up there. My first Wyndham. I haven't read a huge amount more Wyndham yet, but I do definitely want to go back to him for sure. But yeah, this one really surprised me. Again, it surprised me because I expected more Triffids. The Triffids are kind of a secondary thing, really. They are a threat in the background. The real threat is humans, as always. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed the voice of the narrator character, and just the general kind of atmosphere of it, set in London, and kind of a London where, you know, the streets are essentially, you know, almost deserted because everyone's gone blind apart from a few people. So yeah, really interesting setup, and as I say, I really enjoyed the character's voice and kind of his reactions to things. Okay, next up we've got Stranger in a Strange Land. Yeah, that's a DNF. I tried with this, but I just didn't get on with it. There was too much what I'd call speechifying in it. It got a bit too pompous a bit too quickly, and it kind of didn't let up. Was how I kind of felt about it. So it's got some interesting things to say for sure. I just didn't have the tolerance to kind of keep reading, as I say, a lot of the speech, what I'd call the speechifying in it. Then we've got J.G. Ballard, The Drowned World. This is a Fly Me to the Moon, I think. I definitely enjoyed this. I should put it there. I definitely enjoyed this. There are some amazing descriptions of the actual environment in it. I really liked that kind of side of it. But it's dated. It is dated for sure. There is some problematic stuff in there. But in terms of the world building and the kind of the concept of it, and as I say, the description of the world, the natural side of things, really loved that. And definitely, it certainly made me want to read some more Ballard eventually. But again, he's not one that's a priority for the moment. Okay, then we've got next up we've got another Wyndham, which is Chucky. Yeah, I really enjoyed this one. Very short one, about a young lad who has an imaginary friend called Chucky, who he calls Chucky. It's well worth a read. It's very short. I had it on audiobook and it was only about 5 hours or something, and it's got some great humour to it and all of that. I think I'm gonna put that. I think it deserves to go up here. It's probably like lower down on that tier or higher up on that tier. I'm going to stick it in the back there for now. But yeah, more like Wyndham's style is very endearing, and I just it is. I know people kind of refer to it as cozy catastrophe sometimes, and I can see why. That's less catastrophic than the Triffids. Chucky's a kind of a nicer story. But yeah, it's some really interesting ideas in it again. Okay, next up we've got The Fifth Wave. Yeah, this one can go right I think, down the end of Fly Me to the Moon. I did enjoy it. I did enjoy it, but it hasn't necessarily made me want to read any more in the series. It's not. It wasn't bad enough that it goes in stuck in low or Earth orbit, but it just didn't inspire me massively. But it's got some. It had some interesting, ideas in it, and I think for somebody of the right age, I think probably I'm just a bit too old for it. It is YA at the end of the day. Somebody of the right age, I think, will obviously get more out of it than I did. But it's still well constructed, a good idea, good character voice again of the teenage protagonist. Then we've got The White Mountains, the first in the Tripod trilogy. This was a stuck in low Earth orbit. I can't say that, can I? It's better than The Swarm. This wasn't bad per se. It just wasn't for me. It was very dry, and there were story elements to it that just aren't my cup of tea. Basically, I didn't like it, but it's not a bad book. Okay, more Becky Chambers. Where is this going to go, I wonder? Yeah, it's got to go into Infinity and Beyond, I think, this one. To Be Taught If Fortunate, I reckon it should go there. It's a novella, this one, and it's not as much of a hug in a book as, say, Prayer for the Crown Shy or Song for the Wild Built. It's got a bit more darkness to it, for sure. But it's still got that wonderful, warm writing style and found family and gentle philosophy to it. If you've not read that one, I thoroughly recommend it. I really loved it. More Becky Chambers, The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. This one is actually going to go in a galaxy far away. This is my least favourite of the Becky Chambers that I've read. I think, though, it does deserve to go up front. If I can get it in there. Come on. There we go. It just didn't capture me quite as much as some of the shorter stuff, and it may just be that actually I like Chambers' shorter work better. But it's still fantastic. It's found family again. It's a crew on a space, a bit of a ragtag bunch of misfits on a spaceship. All with kind of baggage, personal baggage, all that kind of stuff, secrets to hide, things like that. But it's very positive. It's very diverse. It's funny. It's warm. It has stakes to it. I do need to finish that series. That's one of my goals for this year, is to get back and finish that series. Okay, 2001: A Space Odyssey by Arthur C. Clarke. I don't think it hits as much as Childhood's End did. So I think it's going to go in a galaxy far away, and I think it probably ought to go in there. No, there. I'm not a fan of the movie. I never have been a fan of the movie, so I was a little bit about reading this, thinking, I'm going to like this. And actually, the book's fantastic. Love the book. Still can't stand the film. I did watch the film again after that. Can't stand it. I think I'm just not a Kubrick fan. I think that's the thing. But yeah, 2001, absolutely brilliant. Some fantastic writing. And again, that wonderful Clarkness of ease you in and then smack you in the face with some really bright brain melty, conceptual science at the end. Okay, next one is Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant. This is going to go in Fly Me to the Moon. I think that can go in... there. It's more of a horror in some respects, and it's got a little bit of fantasy element, I guess, in it as well in some respects, but it's definitely got science fiction in it. It is a group of scientists on a cruise ship going out to try and find the remains of a ship that was sunk, and and also trying to find evidence of actual mermaids. So yeah. But yeah, it's definitely it's very horror led as well as science fiction. But it's again, it's a good fun book. It's a good fun read, and it does exactly what it means to do. And it's got some great diversity in it, I have to say. Got some great representation in terms of both queer representation and disability representation. Good strong female characters as well. Then we've got Solaris by Stanislav Lem. I do really like this, but I'm going to pop this in up towards the top, I think, of In a Galaxy Far, Far Away, because it's not the sort of thing I'd choose to read regularly, because talk about mind melting. Yeah, that was hard work. I mean, that was, I think, the third attempt to read it. My third attempt, and third time lucky, I succeeded, and that's because I went with the audiobook. But I had tried to read that a couple of times prior, and had DNF'd it because I just kind of, my brains were melting out my ears once I got to certain sections of it. But I'm glad I finished it. It's a phenomenal book, and it left me with loads to think about. But it's maybe a bit much for me on a regular basis, that kind of thing. Okay, Children of Time. There's no surprises there, really. I don't need to go on about this one again. It's going right up there, right at the front. Get out of the way, Project Hail Mary. You've been unseated from your top place as top science fiction. Children of Time, love it, brilliant. Like, got me into science fiction, that kind of sort of modern science fiction, and into Tchaikovsky. I love Tchaikovsky now. And Children of Time is what did it. It's an absolutely phenomenal book. And then Children of Ruin. Children of Ruin is still brilliant. Still loved it. But it's not as good as Children of Time. Do I put it up here? Do I put it back there? I'm going to pop it in there, I think. Because I still really loved it. There's still so much about it that I really enjoyed. And there's some great horror elements that creep into this that are kind of sort of slightly darkly humorous, I would say, but also actually really tense, really quite spooky. So yeah, still a fantastic book, but yeah, just not a patch on Children of Time. Okay, Planet of the Apes by Pierre Boulle. Stuck in a low Earth orbit and all the way along the back there. I did not like that one at all. Very, very dated and just dull. I thought, no. And I'm glad I've read it. It's done. Enough said. Okay, John W. Campbell, Who Goes There? I've included this because I kind of thought, shall I do like novelettes and things like that? And I thought, I'll do novelettes. I won't do short stories, but I'll do, down to novelettes, basically. So Who Goes There? Obviously what The Thing was based on. This is going into infinity and beyond. I think this one can go in... just about there. It's a fantastic novelette, that. It's got some cracking tense writing in it, and it was fantastic to see where The Thing kind of came from, because The Thing is one of my favourite films. As kind of short pieces of that era, Who Goes There is absolutely fantastic. And I do need to go and read Frozen Hell, which is kind of an extended version of it. Okay then, The Body Snatchers by Jack Finney. That is also going up here. That, I think, can go in... I'm going to pop it in between those two, I think. I was glued to this. As soon as I started it, that was it. I was on it till I finished it. I didn't want to put it down at all. It's a constant low level of tension all the way through it. And the kind of picture that Finney paints of this kind of small town community, and the fact, that it's the sort of community that, everybody knows each other, everybody trusts each other, all that kind of stuff. It's like, the 50s, 60s. you know, and all of a sudden something happens which means, you know, people can't trust that their loved ones are who they say they are. It's, yeah, suspicion, tension, weirdness, questioning of one's sanity. Oh, just, yeah, I loved it. It's a brilliant book. Okay, Michael Crichton, Micro, DNF. My sister recommended that to me and said, like, you know, just give it a chance, just give it a chance. And I gave it a chance, and I gave it more of a chance, and it was boring the hell out of me. Plus, the writing is some of the worst writing I think I've seen in a while from an author of that kind of caliber, or that kind of, you know, that sort of big name. That I just kind of went, no, I can't do it. I may go back to it because, according to my sister, it does hit a point where it just goes bonkers and silly and fun. But it'll depend on how much I can be bothered to try and get through the really rubbishy stuff at the beginning. Okay, Children of Memory. Yeah, this is my least favourite of the Children of Time trilogy. I think this one does have to go up here. I think that can probably slot in there. Still brilliant, but I had a lot more questions from that in terms of not plot holes or anything like that, but I think it just, there was a lot more that I didn't feel necessarily slotted into place as well as with the other two. There were some elements to it which I thought were absolutely fantastic, and it's still a fantastic book, but it's just my least favourite than the first two. Okay, The Giver then. The Giver is also going to go into Stuck in Low Earth Orbit. I think probably there. Yeah, I just, again, writing style felt a little dry, and also just, I think, a little patronising in some respects. I didn't really get on with it in terms of its style. Again, I think potentially for younger readers it could be a really interesting book, but it just didn't work for me. But then, you know, I'm in my 40s. The Maze Runner by James Dashner, that is a DNF. Didn't like the characters at all. They got on my nerves immediately, and took way too long to get into the good stuff where they're running the maze and monsters and stuff like that. Yeah, the characters, no, just couldn't deal. Okay, more Tchaikovsky then. Cage of Souls. Yeah, this is going into... this is going to go into a galaxy far, far away, I think, but it's going to go up front because I did love that. Do I want to put it in there? Do I want to put it up there? Is it one of my favourites of his? No, I'm going to leave it there for now. Decisions. But yeah, it's very different from, say, Children of Time. It's more science fantasy than anything else. It's all over the shop. You know, you can't tell where it's going to go, and it goes everywhere and goes off on tangents, and it's an unreliable narrator. But there's some great characters in it, and there's some great just ideas in it, and some great world building in it. It's bonkers, but it's fun bonkers. Okay, we're getting down towards the end, I promise. Okay, then we've got Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. Some definitely some science fantasy, this one. This one can go in Fly Me to the Moon. I think probably in there. Lots of elements of this that I did like a lot by the time I got into it, but it took me a long time to get into it because it's strange. It's like gothic necromancers in space, lesbian gothic necromancers in space. It's quite complex. There's a lot going on in it, but once I got into it, it was really good fun. But it did take me some effort to get into it. Okay, Alien 3, the William Gibson unproduced script, basically. this one is also going to go into Fly Me to the Moon. That can go in there. It's definitely enjoyed it more than Covenant Origins rather. Yeah, it was good fun. That it was a short, sharp little, kind of performance of the unproduced script, and I do wish that had been the script that had been produced into a film. To be honest, it's far better than the Alien 3 that got produced, in my opinion. I don't dislike Alien 3, but that would have been awesome to see. Okay, Ursula K. Le Guin at the Left Hand of Darkness. This one I am also going to put Fly Me to the Moon. It's going to go up towards the top though. Yeah. Yeah. Writing style of the first half didn't really get on with, was a slog for me. But some of the ideas, or a lot of the ideas in it, are fantastic, and that's what kept me going. Second half of it, ripped through it. It's great. So a bit of a book of two halves, but just in terms of ideas, philosophy, things like that Le Guin is talking about and discussing. I definitely want to read some more of her stuff. Okay, Days of Ascension by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This has got to go in a galaxy far, far away, I think it's probably, I'll put it behind Walking to Aldebaran. This is a Warhammer book. I do like Warhammer. I haven't read a huge amount of Warhammer 40k stuff, like the novels, tie-ins, etc. But I read that one because it's Adrian Tchaikovsky. And he did a great job with it, and it was a really good, fun book. Again, using his trademark humour and his great writing style and stuff, but I think he gets the Warhammer universe, and he did a really good job on that. Really, really good. But if you like Warhammer, I'd definitely say read that one. Okay, Alien: The Cold Forge then, by Alex White. Yeah, this has got to go in the To Infinity and Beyond. I think I'm going to drop it in just behind Children of Ruin there. Yeah, it's a phenomenal Alien tie-in, that one. Absolutely brilliant. Loved it. It's got one of my new favourite villain in it, Dorian in it, is just, oh, what a piece of work. Great character work in this. Really tense. Some really tense stuff in it. Great bits with the aliens, which are scary. But the scariest thing in it is Dorian. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. I'm really looking forward to reading some more Alex White stuff. Okay, then we've got This Is How You Lose the Time War by Max Gladstone and Amal El Mutar. This is going to go into, this Fly Me to the Moon, I think. And I will pop it in here. Lots of fantastic ideas, some really great humorous sections, really interesting structure, really interesting kind of experiment. Two writers writing this, it's what is essentially a series of letters backwards and forwards. But at times just too purple in terms of its prose for me. It lost me as it went on, in terms of it went a little bit too over the top. But still, really, really interesting book, and I think some really great writing in there, and just a great experiment, which work. It does work. Okay, We Who Are About To by Joanna Russ. This is going to go into Stuck in Low Earth Orbit, but I'll put it up the front there. Yeah, again, a lot to like, but ultimately I got cheesed off with it. Two halves again, book of two halves, but the opposite way around to The Left Hand of Darkness, where, like in this one, the first half could really get on board with it. The second half, oh my word, no. Yeah, it definitely, and when it finishes on that note, it's, yeah, that stops me from actually saying that I like it. There are some great ideas in it, and it's an important book in terms of its ideas, and some of it's, certainly the first half, the character voice, but ultimately it left me quite cold. Okay, Parable of the Sower one of the final books that I read for science fiction for the somewhat hesitant in 2024. This has got to go into infinity and beyond. I think it's got to go up here. Difficult to know where to put this one. I think I'm going to put it there, because although I think it's a more important book than something like Alien, or any of a few of these, really, a lot of these, in terms of enjoyment factor, I can't say I enjoyed it. I value it immensely, but I didn't enjoy it. It's a very difficult read, but I think it's a phenomenal book, so it has to go in there. I think it's one that I definitely will read more Butler, but just not regularly because it's heavy. Okay, penultimate one is Space Opera, which I've just done a thoughts video on. This was a DNF, although I will put it all the way up the front there because there was a lot about it that I think I would have liked had I been able to get on board with the writing style, which was just too absurd for me. And then finally we've got The Doors of Eden by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This is gonna go in Fly Me to the Moon. This is my least favourite Tchaikovsky I've read so far out of the, I think, 9 that I've read now, because I've read some fantasy of his as well, which obviously doesn't appear on this list. Yeah, there was a lot I liked about this, and some stuff that actually really irritated me. I will probably do a review of it at some point, so I'll go into details with that later. But there is still some great humour in there. There's some great cultural referencing. There's some really fantastic ideas, things like that, and some great sort of evolutionary science speculation stuff, which I think is phenomenal in it. That's the bit that really works. But then some of the characters just aren't anywhere near as good as the character, or the characters as an ensemble, if you like, aren't as good as some of his other stuff, although there are some standout characters in it. And yeah, there were just a couple of sections that just went on a bit. I could always accuse him of being a bit prone to overwriting, but mostly I don't mind because it's all really entertaining. That's the first time I've come across anything with his where I'm like, you're pushing that line now, Adrian, of like when I'm going to lose patience. He didn't quite step over it, but he came close. But still really good book. That's why it's up here at the front of Fly Me to the Moon. But yeah, it's definitely not, it's nowhere near the level of, say, Children of Time trilogy or anything like that, but still absolutely worth a read. So there we go. That is my ranking. I think I'm reasonably happy with that in terms of the ranking even within the categories. I think that's relatively fair. It would always change about anyway, won't it? But depending on how I'm feeling on any given day. But yeah, I reckon that's pretty fair. My favourites are definitely all up here, and certainly just into the top part of here are my absolute favourites. But yes, so there you go. 55 science fiction books read so far during my BookTube career, if you like. I've read a couple outside of that, a couple of classics, things like that. So at some stage I might go back and talk about all of the stuff that I've ever read. But I wanted to restrict it because we're already running at this is going to be like an hour long, I should think, this video. And I've only done 55 books. So with that in mind, I'm going to shut up now. Yeah, I'll leave it there. I hope you've enjoyed this random little tier ranking video. I've enjoyed doing this, actually. This has been quite good fun. So yes, thank you very much for watching, folks. If you're still with me, drop your thoughts in the comments below. Which of my rankings do you wholeheartedly agree with? Which are you, shocked and dismayed at? You're shouting at the screen. Yeah, let me know in the comments where I've gone wrong. I will be back on Tuesday with a tag video, as always, for Tag Tuesday. So I do hope you'll join me for that then. But from me, for now, that's ta-ra.